Hello guys, welcome back to another one of my videos. In today's video, I want to discuss this book that I just finished like 10 minutes ago. The book is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it, and I'm sure a lot of you have read it, but I just read it for the first time, and I have to say it's great. It's definitely a book that I recommend. So this book is about a girl, she's 6 years old, and she grows up gradually during the book, but it's not a big amount of time. At the end of the book, she's just 8 years old, so it's not really a big evolution of a person. Yet, it's a very interesting way to write a book from the POV of a 6-year-old girl because she has that energy that a 6-year-old girl has, and also this curiosity for the world. It's very interesting to hear the point of view of a 6-year-old girl in the 60s in this little town in Alabama, and her relationship with her older brother and her father and her aunt and her whole family and her neighbors and her friends and the school and everything. I had never read something similar before, and I really liked it because you can see the way life was going on back in the 60s. So this book is 54 years old. Well, not this copy is quite recent, but the first time this book was published was 54 years ago. This is the kind of book that someone reads in high school. In the United States, people actually might read this in high school. I really don't know that because I'm not from the United States, but it's a really popular book. It won a Pulitzer. I really recommend you to go read it because it's great. It's a great book. It's a lovely story and it has great characters. So for those of you who have not read it, I'm gonna start with the spoiler part of the video. So unless you want to be spoiled, then you probably shouldn't be watching this. Okay, so the main character, Jean-Louise Finch, or as they like to call them, Scout Finch. I loved her. I think it was very interesting to have this kind of POV. Then her brother, Jeremy Finch, Jem Finch, I was kind of annoyed by him at first. What's your problem, dude? Just let her be. But then I began realizing that there were some similitudes between him and me because I also am the eldest child and I have a younger sister, and I think that it's kind of a projection maybe. I think I felt related to this character as the book went on. So please, oh please, I really hope I was not such an annoying brother as he was at the beginning of the book. And if I am, I'm really sorry. If you ever watch this, sis, I'm sorry. I'll change that. Eventually, as the story moved on, I began liking him more. They also have this friend called Dale. I was kind of expecting to see a closure of the character of Dale at the end of the book. As they are growing up and playing, Dale once tells Scout that when they grow up and have money, he's going to marry her. And I think that was really cute to hear a little boy tell that to a girl. I was kind of expecting that at the end we would see a resolution of that, if they actually got married or not. I was waiting for that at the end. That didn't happen. Anyway. Now their father, Atticus. 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 It's a weird name. I like the character. He's like this cool dad. You can see how in his very unique way how much he loves his children. He scolds them when it's necessary, but he never yells at them. He's a lawyer, so he uses this fancy lawyery terms even with his children. I like the character, except at one little part at the end when he was just so stubborn. Now, Aunt Alexandra.
I hated that woman.
What the hell was she doing there? She simply abandoned her husband and son to go live with them and change their lives completely. What the hell is wrong with you? Something that I really liked about this book is all the teachings, all the things that you actually learn if you see them from the point of view of a 6-year-old girl. Everyone can have those opinions when they're 6-year-olds, but eventually you grow up and you forget about them. Sometimes you need a 6-year-old girl to remember you that, to make you see things from a different perspective. The one part that I really liked about this book that I think was very touching and emotive was when this woman, this grumpy old lady that is always yelling at people in the street and trying to correct them for whatever they do wrong, that in her opinion everything they do is wrong. As a punishment for destroying her flowers, Jem is supposed to go to her house and read her. He doesn't have to do anything else, just read. So he goes to her house 1 hour every day. And Scout, her sister, goes with him so he won't be alone in that house with that grumpy old lady. And so he's there reading, and at the beginning, every time he's reading, the old lady begins correcting him every time he makes a mistake while reading. But eventually she just goes silent and like mumbling really quietly to herself, like grumping in pain, but really, really quietly. And they even think that she's asleep. And when the time is up, this alarm clock would sound and she would tell them to go. This goes along for several days, several weeks, eventually more than 1 month. And of course, they don't like it because they would rather be outside playing than inside this old lady's house. When the last day of his punishment is over, this old lady simply asks him to leave. And the very next day, they are informed by their father that Mrs. DeVos has died because she was in pain all the time, and those little noises that she always did when they were reading is because she was complaining about the pain. But she had been taking these painkillers all her life, and she was decided to die without being in drugs with the painkillers. So there's this quote that I really liked. I wanted you to see something about her. I wanted you to see what real courage is. Instead of getting the idea that courage is a man with a gun in his hand. It's when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway, and you see it through no matter what. You rarely win, but sometimes you do. Mrs. DuBose won, all 98 pounds of her. According to her views, she died beholden to nothing and nobody. She was the bravest person I ever knew. That was so... It made me think of Harry Potter, Snape, who was the bravest man I've ever knew. I also like how Scout, she's not very ladylike. Her father and her aunt are always trying to make her be more ladylike, and she just doesn't like it because she likes to wear overalls instead of dresses, and she'd rather be outside playing in the mud than inside in a tea party. Through the book, she realizes that being a lady doesn't mean being weak, that actually a lady is someone that is very strong, maybe not physically strong, but emotionally strong. That keeping a good image is not something that easy as the way as it's described by her at the beginning of the book. So even though I didn't like the character of her aunt Alexandra, I did like what she taught her, and eventually she actually became more ladylike. Not completely a lady, but you know, baby steps that an 8-year-old girl can do. And of course there are some funny moments as well. There are some funny quotes that I'd like to share. Children who slept out of night were a disgrace to the family. Atticus said he was right glad his disgraces had come along. Just in your own words was Mr. Glimmer's trademark. We often wonder who else's words Mr. Glimmer was afraid his witnesses might employ. And then the trial. There's this trial to a black man that has been accused for raping a white girl. Since this was in the 60s, segregation was all over the place. So the scene of the trial was so intense, I was at the edge of my seat. By my seat, I mean my bed. I was literally up until 3 in the morning reading that part because it was so intense and I could not stop reading until I knew the result. That scene of a trial when you know who's to blame and who's innocent, but yet you want to know how it's going to be resolved. And Atticus, the father, actually solved the case. Well, screw that! The freaking jury found him guilty. It was so beautifully described how he was innocent. First up, he was missing a hand. How was he supposed to be holding her and then doing all the other things if he was missing a hand? Racist people who rather give this opportunity to an abusive, lazy, drunk father instead of this innocent man just because he was black. But that's not all. Even after this abusive man was found innocent, even though he was obviously the one who had beaten her own daughter up, he threatened Atticus that he was going to chase him and kill him. Atticus, so innocent and so good and naive, thought that he was just bluffing.
Of course, he's not gonna do that. He just needed to get that out of his chest.
Yeah, well, he shot the judge. Even after shooting the judge, Atticus was not taking that threat seriously. So time goes on, we only have 30 pages left of the book, and there's still so many things that are unresolved, and I'm fearing because when that happens, I just get so anxious and nervous and I don't know what's gonna happen. He attacked Scout and Jem, two innocent children that had nothing to do with that. How coward is that? You don't go after the man that you thought. No, you had to go against their two innocent little children. From the moment the lights went out, I knew that it was Bob Ewell who was after them. I was really scared for their lives because there were still many things that needed closure, but we only had like 30 more pages in the book. And when that happens, I start plotting really, really bad scenarios in my head, and that's not good for my health, but I still do it. But oh, he was so stupid and so drunk that he managed to fall into his own knife and kill himself, and then everything was fine. I didn't love the end because a lot of things were unresolved, in my opinion, that I would have liked to know more about what happened to them after that. But the book is great, the whole story is great. It's a really, 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 really amazing book. Everyone should treat themselves and give themselves the pleasure to read it because it's just great. It's so beautiful. Look at it, it's so beautiful. That's all for today, folks. Thanks for watching.